Why is RC servo arm and linkage setup critical for kits? Imagine trying to steer a boat with a loose rudder or a car with wobbly steering. It would be hard to control, right? The same idea applies to your RC models. The setup of the servo arm and linkage is what makes your model respond smoothly and accurately. When you build an RC kit, you want every movement to be precise. That's why getting the servo arm and linkage just right is so important. The servo arm is the part attached directly to the servo motor. It turns when you give a command from the remote. This rotation then moves the linkage, which is usually a rod or push rod. The linkage connects the servo arm to the control surface like a rudder, elevator, or steering rack. If these parts are not set up properly, your control surfaces won't move correctly. That can cause your model to respond slowly, jerkily, or even not at all. One key reason this setup is critical is control accuracy. The servo arm must be centered when the servo is at its neutral position. If it's off-center, your control surfaces won't sit at the neutral point when you think they are. Adjusting the linkage length so that the control surfaces are neutral when the servo is neutral makes sure your model responds exactly as you want. Another important factor is the geometry and alignment. The linkage should be as straight and horizontal as possible. If it slopes or bends, it can cause uneven force on the servo or control surface. This can lead to inconsistent movements and even damage over time. Proper alignment helps the control surfaces move smoothly through their full range without binding or sticking. Range of motion is also affected by how you set up the linkage. You want the control surfaces to move fully from one extreme to the other without overextending the servo or hitting other parts. For example, if your steering linkage is too long or too short, it could limit your turning radius or cause the servo to strain. Small clearances of about 2 to 3 millimeters between the linkage and nearby parts help prevent interference during operation. Secure attachment is another piece of the puzzle. All parts like control horns, servo arms, and linkages need to be tightly fastened with screws or clips. Loose parts can slip or come apart during use, which can ruin your drive or flight. Using thread lock on screws can keep everything in place over many cycles. For balanced steering or control, both sides of the linkage need to be set up equally. If one side is longer or at a different angle, your model might turn unevenly. This makes it harder to control and can cause uneven wear on parts. In practical kit assembly, start by centering the servo before attaching the servo arm. Then, connect the linkage at a 90-degree angle to the servo arm for the best first transfer. Adjust the linkage length so the control surfaces are neutral when the servo is centered. Check that the movement is smooth and full range without binding. Secure all connections properly and make sure the linkage does not interfere with other parts. Getting the servo arm and linkage set up right is a simple step that makes a big difference. It ensures your RC model moves predictably and responds quickly. Poor setup can lead to jerky movements, strain on the servo, or even loss of control. Taking the time to do it carefully during kit assembly saves you trouble later and keeps your model running smoothly.